Welcome to the HIT podcast, H.I.T, Human Resources, Insurance, and Technology. I'm your host, Toby Kennedy. As we do every week, we're dropping into your feed with what we hope are bite-sized, digestible, well-curated conversations going on in the space. This week's episode will be no exception. Join us on a weekly basis. Like, subscribe as we drop in your feed on Tuesdays with episodes like this one coming at you, sponsored by Montage Insurance Solutions. And without any further ado, I bring on my friend Rob Cinco. Rob, what's up, man? How are you?
Good. How are you? How are you, Toby?
Yeah, really good, really good. Really glad to have you here. I think we're going to cover a fun topic that maybe some employers have a little info on. Some employers might honestly not even know about it at all, and it's a really cool benefit. Before we dive into LSAs, Rob, tell me a little bit about you and why you're qualified to speak about an LSA.
Sure. Yeah. So I've been working in benefit type accounts like lifestyle spending accounts, LSAs. Started my career working with flexible spending accounts with some really large employers, and we did a lot of different things with benefit accounts like childcare subsidies. We did things like mildly ill dependent subsidies as well. So fast forward to today, where I'm at Lively and working with healthcare spending accounts, health savings accounts, flexible spending accounts, and we also do lifestyle spending accounts, which have been a hot topic.
Yeah, we were talking a little bit before the cameras heated up, and you were saying, Toby, these kind of grew a little bit during COVID.
Yeah, so a lot of companies were looking at ways to get people set up during COVID, and there's also a lot of people, a lot of companies in the tech industries and other industries where employees work from home. So what people were doing was, well, how can we deliver this money to them? We just give them credit cards, and so they actually built lifestyle spending accounts to actually fund that. And so at Lively, we offer that benefit. It basically sets up where the employee has a budget that's assigned by the company, and so they can purchase the item, and then the company reviews, or Lively in this case would review the item that they purchased and the receipts, and then the employee would get reimbursed. Alternatively, they could also set it up with a funded card.
Yeah.
A lot of companies are doing as well. So the company will say, each period, it could be a monthly period or a quarterly period or an annual period, whatever the company chooses. They say, we're going to allot this amount for the employees to get their offices set up, or, in that case, to get their offices set up.
Yeah, and when you say in that case, get their offices set up, what I'm hearing you say is, that's one way employers use LSAs, but they're a pretty flexible vehicle for employers to say, basically, I'd like to give my employees X amount of dollars, and I'd like it to go specifically to N reason, right?
Yeah. So, a lot of employers will not know what the employees are asking for, or maybe they've done surveys and they know what the employees are really asking for. And, a lot of employers have things that they're already purchasing today. They could have a wellness program. They could already be doing like a education or a tuition reimbursement program. But people that aren't in college, or people that don't have, don't really want to participate in wellness, so to speak, they say, hey, what's in it for me, right? What about me? Why can't I have something? And so an employer can basically build an LSA to meet the needs of their clients, and that's why it can be so flexible. And I think that's really what's attractive to employers that are interested in LSAs, is that they can use it for so many different purposes.
And either they, or as you mentioned, you guys at Lively can kind of referee the spend. So you might say, hey, I'd like to give my employees, and you said earlier, it can be monthly, quarterly, annually, but let's just say for the sake of example, I want to give my employees, call it, I don't know, $400 a month, and I want it to go specifically to these qualified healthcare things. So maybe it's a gym membership, or it's the Pilates studio, the jiu-jitsu gym, something like that. And the employees then can get, is it typically where they get reimbursed? So they pay first and they get reimbursed, and or as you said, a loaded card where they can spend it at the point of sale, and it just kind of needs to be adjudicated to make sure that the employee is spending it in the way that the employer designed.
Yeah, so that's a great thing about the LSAs, is the employer has a lot of flexibility on the way they want to set that up, right? So it's always a balance because obviously if you preload the card and you want to, that ideally that's the from the participant point of view, that's the that's the most user friendly approach.
Yeah.
They don't have to go out of pocket, and they have this loaded card that they can go spend on qualified expenses. Now we can still make sure that they're using it for qualified expenses by adjudicating it at the back end, like through merchant category codes and things like that. But that is the most generous way to deliver an LSA
Yeah.
and to get really a lot of bang for your buck. But conversely, like some employers might say, hey, I want to use this to complement my tuition reimbursement program for someone that might be doing it for, maybe like a class here or there, or maybe for like a conference. And we have one at Lively. It's called the Level Up benefit, right? So if I want to use it to go to, let's say, an HR course, a DEI HR course or
Yeah.
something, I can submit it. And in that scenario, how Lively does it is that they actually have me, go out of pocket first, and then I submit a copy of the expense. And it's processed just like any other reimbursement account, typically 1 to 2 business days,
Yeah.
and then direct deposited back in my account. You can also do it where it's reimbursed back into the employee's paycheck if you
Yeah.
want. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you say there's a lot of flexibility. Are there parameters to it? Like what can or can't an employer say, all right, we're going to set you up with an LSA account, but it's ineligible to go towards this or that? Or what are some of the parameters for an employer listening?
Well, so I mean, it really is because it's a taxable benefit, right? It really is whatever the employer wants to subsidize for their employees, and an employer is going to decide on that based on one, how much have the employee's been asking for it, and then number two, and this isn't to sound um, like it's all driven by a business purpose, but most employers are doing this because they have a specific reason, right? Whether it's retention or whether it's recruiting. And so an employer will say, okay, well, these are the things that I know that my target audience or my employees have told me that these are the types of things that they want to include, right? So what we typically recommend is if you're looking at an LSA, the first thing you do is take a category take a catalog of everything you're offering today, right? And take a look at those spends that you're having today, and then and say, is that something that I can basically repurpose into an LSA? And right away you already have budget that you're already spending towards an LSA. And then the purpose of doing that is, let's say you're adding additional benefits. At some point, you're going to be able to consolidate everything under an LSA where it'll be under one roof, and then you'll be able to aggregate and see which ones have the highest utilization, which ones, do employees seem to gravitate towards, which ones aren't getting a lot of, a lot of participation. So maybe that's something that, you either reduce the amount or maybe replace it with something else, right?
Yeah, so if an employer was like, hey, we're just trying to be fun here, we try to add something that's splashy in the benefits portfolio, and we know if we give you money, boy, it might go to toilet paper or Amazon, so we're going to give you a $500 annual LSA budget that has to be used for, approved fun things, movie tickets, concerts,
Yeah,
vacation money, right? Where we say, we're giving you this money, but you can only tap into it if you're spending it on something fun for yourself.
right. So absolutely. I mean, I've heard stories or read stories of employers that actually gave to their. It was a startup in New York, and they actually gave a first date subsidy for for their employees and said, hey, you need to go out and spend this money on a date, right? I've also seen it where a client would offer a meal stipend, right, each month, and it says, hey, you know what, go buy yourself something nice. And a lot of the times too, it depends on the corporate culture, right?
Right.
So I've seen LSAs where the employer says, hey, you can do whatever you want with this. You can also donate it towards the charity of your choice. So
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. And basically, it's a vehicle for the employer to provide the employee money with some strings attached to it. Because as you said earlier, talk to me about the tax ramifications of an LSA.
So I mean, it'll typically show up as income, right,
Yeah.
for the employee, and it's going to be taxed. But again, the employee didn't go out of pocket, and it's not something that they had to earn. It was just given to them.
Yeah.
And so, yes, there are tax ramifications, but let's say that someone's in a 30% tax bracket with state and everything else.
Yeah.
$100 benefit then net is 70 towards
Yeah.
whatever it is that they were looking to spend. And what's really nice about the LSAs is that they really are the ultimate in flexibility, right? Because if you offer something to an employee, and we've all seen this, right? When you offer, I've worked with clients that offered like a child care subsidy because they had a high
Mm-hmm.
population of employees that were in their childbearing ages, right? And so what they ended up doing was offering a child care subsidy, and the blowback from the people that didn't have children was actually pretty significant, right?
Yeah.
Like about me. So all of a sudden, now you're offering that, and I think that's great. The other thing is, even if you're offering something like a 401k match, right? Someone might say, hey, you know what? I don't put any money into the 401k because we're going through my spouses, and so like I'm not getting anything. Well, an LSA can be something that they can use. So it's a great vehicle.
Yeah, I guess my point in the tax question was saying kind of what it is and what it's not. And it's not for tax advantageous purposes. It's for highly flexible ways to give to employees and maybe even like dare yourself to be a little creative, or as you're saying right now, a little bit of like a playing field leveler, right? Where you can have these buckets of money where you as an employer try to, because, as you're pointing out, no good deed goes unpunished. So you as an employer are trying to do something that enhances recruitment and retention. And to some point, you've disgruntled some population. So the LSAs can be kind of a fun level setter in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I can give you an example. So at my employer, for example, we offer three key lifestyle spending accounts. One is a wellness-based one, which we can use on mental health apps, on gym memberships, um, on a lot of things, anything that keeps us active, right? In fact, one of my colleagues actually used it to buy his season ski pass, right?
Oh,
So
cool. Yeah.
really cool. And then we also have a level up, which actually is the one where we can take courses or go to conferences, and that's subsidized by the company. The company obviously has an interest in delivering that to us because it makes sure that it makes sure that we're keeping our skills strong. So I could take it for a sales course, I can take it for an AI course or
Yeah.
something like that. And then the last one is actually the home office LSA. So, like for example, when I came on board, they said, Rob, you have $200 to spend. Aside from everything that we've already given you, which is your computer and all of that, here's $200 to get your office ready and set up. So, I used it to buy like some headsets, a better set of speakers, maybe a nice chair. So,
Yeah. Printer if you need it or something like that type of thing. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Cool. I think that's really cool. That's really helpful. Maybe one last thing that might be rattling around in people's mind is the logistics and the moving pieces. So if I am HR and I am interested, am I taking on a huge burden, a light burden? What does it look like to roll one of these guys out? And you can even plug Lively. I mean, you guys are one of the top players in the space. I'm sure you guys are similar-esque, but if you've got a mousetrap for your implementation, how does it look when it's rolling out?
Well, I mean, it's really easy. Once we've made all the decisions, I think that it's really easy. I think the front end is where it's most difficult, and it's really not that difficult, right? So if you're exploring an LSA, the reason you're doing it is because you see a need for it and you think that there might be value. So if you've never, looked at an LSA before, you work with a partner, someone like Lively, who has worked with them, and we would sit there and talk about, okay, well, these are things you want to look at, and here's the things that you might want to consider. And so for us, for example, we'll give you categories, and you can actually choose from each category. You can build it, and then you can aggregate it. And within the categories, you can also say, you know what, these are things that I don't want or I do want approved in that as well. So the second component is, LSAs are all employer funded, right? So it's really building a budget for it, right? So once you look at it, um, like we would be able to give you a fair estimate and say, hey, based on the program you're setting forth right now, let's say it's pre-funded and you have a wide array, you're going to have a very high utilization, right? And so let's call it 75% engagement across your total population times whatever the budget is, and that's what budget you're looking at potentially spending or realistically potentially spending.
Because that's maybe a decent interrupting point here, and I'm sorry to do it, but what happens to unused funds, right? Use it or lose it, roll over their employer dollars ultimately, right?
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, typically we say use it or lose it, and the employee really doesn't lose anything because it was just something that they were, that they were given. But there are some employers that say, hey, let's go ahead and roll it over, right? So you can have a rollover, or you can have we can administer very similar to an FSA, but we're not bound by any IRS guidelines or anything like that.
So if they wanted to give a $500 fun budget and the people didn't spend it all next year, they could have their $500 fun budget plus whatever rolled over from last year.
Right. Or you can have a run out period and say, run it. I mean, you can spend the previous years for the next quarter, something like that. Yeah.
Cool. I love it. Well, anything we haven't touched upon that you think, hey, if I'm an employer listening and I'm learning about LSAs or I'm considering LSAs, one nugget that we didn't hit on yet before we get out?
I think you can use LSAs for something very practical as well, right? Like you can look at them and say, hey, what are some of the business needs I can really, look to solve? Like, for example, if you have people that have pets, right, and they incur significant expenses there, and it's something that you really want to address for them, then it's definitely something you want to look at with your LSA. And another thing is, look at your culture and say, hey, is there something that actually, it really aligns with our culture by providing this LSA?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I imagine, as you said, Lively, right? You guys have a level up budget. The Lululemons of the world ideally have a wellness LSA type of a thing, right? Maybe, I don't know, a food and beverage company, as you said, has a dining allotment or something to say, hey, we want you to keep experiencing different foods and whatever the case is. So maybe know that it's a vehicle, know that it's out there, bounce it against your culture and see if you can't use it to as a fun way to provide your employees an extra benefit.
Yep, absolutely. And it's something that's greatly appreciated. I can tell you that, definitely the newer generation, they're definitely looking at employers that offer something like that. I mean, I don't know if everything else is equal and they see that the employer is offering that, it might be a difference maker, right?
Yeah, yeah. And then obviously employers probably typically align it with their plan year so that they can talk about it at open enrollment when we're talking benefits anyways. But they can be rolled out at any time of the year, right? And we can do it, mid-year and even maybe marry it back up on the back end type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And you might look at a short plan year because you're busy with everything else, and it's a good time to launch it in the middle of the year.
Yeah. Fun. Awesome. Rob, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you. That's all the time we have for you on this week's episode. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Join us next week. Join us every week. We're watching the numbers grow, and we appreciate that so much. This week's episode was brought to you by our sponsors at Montage Insurance Solutions, TrueHue, Rula, Excel Health, the guys that are keeping the lights on. We're blessed to be here. Thank you guys so much. Join us next week. Join us every week. And until next week, make this the best week yet.